Is tutoring a good side job? You bet it is. I am living proof. I quit my career as a pharmacist in order to do tutoring full time, and I've never looked back. Tutoring is an amazing side gig because you can still do all the things you love, whether that be your hobbies, making sure that you still balance your uni or study degree, or even if you're doing other work and you don't want to give that up quite yet as you're building your tutoring income upwards. These are all elements you can consider when thinking about having tutoring as a side job. For me, I started off with 0 students, and 6 months later I had 26 students and I was making over $1,000 each week at 19 years old. That's $52,000 a year. That's more than I was earning as a first-year graduate pharmacist when I was 24. So it's sort of a no-brainer as to why I quit pharmacy in order to pursue a career in tutoring. And since then, I've built my tutoring into a business. I had my first tutor, then 5 tutors, and now I have 50 tutors, and I've got an amazing business and a great lifestyle to pair with it even now. Let me tell you all the different reasons in this video why tutoring is such a great side job for you to do. And if you stay until the end of this video, I will tell you more about my online course where I teach you everything I know about building a successful tutoring business. So the first reason why I would recommend you start tutoring is because you've already done probably the legwork. And what I mean by that is you just need to capitalize the knowledge that you probably already have. If you're planning to tutor in the subject of English, if you're doing year 12, or if you're planning to teach year 1 to 2 maths, I'm going to presume that if you're somebody who's curious about tutoring, you want to start tutoring in something that you already know, right? So in a sense, you're not really starting completely from scratch. You've already got all this amazing in your knowledge that you want to share with people, that you want to be able to teach other students. So this is a super quick pointer because we're going to move into point 2 now, but this is just to say that the barrier to entry is probably not as hard as you think it is. 2 is income. All right, it's the elephant in the room. Everybody knows that with tutoring, you can make an amazing income with it. And I have to agree. You know, I started off with tutoring, and this is like back in 2009, so I was charging only $25 an hour as a first year out. And then as I increased my experience over the years, I went up to 30, 40, 45, 50, 60, and eventually I was charging over $100 an hour for tutoring because of my extensive experience in my field, which is English, by the way, in case you didn't realize on this channel. With tutoring, it's one of those types of jobs where you get to dictate your own rate. So unlike going to work for somebody else where you are beholden to how much they're willing to give you as pay rises, you can dictate your rate. Often when you dictate your own rate, you can jump up increments a lot quicker. So rather than waiting for that 2% or 3% rise from your employer, which is sort of standard, you're maybe jumping $5 or even $10 or even $15, let's say, if you're somebody who's really good at what you do and in super high demand. I know a lot of you aren't really sure how much you should charge yourself, especially to begin with, but I'd say that it's one of those things you kind of just figure out as you go. So you put a benchmark of what you think you should be charging and how much you're worth, and then I just put the feelers out there, start getting those students in and start seeing whether or not people are catching the hook. Do they want you for that price point? And if they don't, rather than dropping your value first, think about what you're offering them. Are you not selling yourself in the best way possible? Are you not a right match for them in terms of their needs and what you can offer? So I'd have a think about some of those things first before lowering your price. Having said that, there is nothing wrong with lowering your price. I mean, I started off at $25 an hour, which these days, tutors come out of high school and they charge like $50 an hour. So times have definitely changed, but you know, 25 was something that I was comfortable with, and I thought, you know, this is my first time tutoring. I'm going to start off my year with $25, and then as I get better at this, I'm going to increase it. And I'm really glad I did. I think I was able to get in a lot of students in my first year, and then in the following years, I had a waiting list, and so I could sort of charge the amount that I really wanted. Not that I didn't want the $25 to begin with, that already was huge compared to me going to work at, say, a retail store and only getting around $20 or less. So that's something else to think about. I think tutoring is just a great industry to be in compared to working for somebody else. Number 3 is flexibility. Man, oh man, can I talk about the flexibility. If you're in uni or you have another job and you just want to do tutoring as a side job, it's perfect because students go to school 9 to 5. No, sorry, they go to school 9 to 3-ish. And so you have evenings and weekends to do your tutoring job, and your clientele, your customers, your students, they're available at those times. I find that a lot of people start tutoring not because they want to be, stuck in that 9 to 5 schedule, but because they want to have, maybe their mornings free to sleep in or to do other errands, or perhaps they're, looking after their children and waiting for their husband to come home. And then at nighttime is when they have time for themselves to do their work and go out and tutor other people, or have other people come to their house. It's an obvious point, but even beyond this sort of evening and weekend shift schedule, you determine your own schedule. So you can determine whether or not you want to tutor 1 student a day. If you want to pack 5 students into one Saturday afternoon and then call it a week. And if you wanted to have a more dispersed option where you have students coming to you Monday to Thursday, maybe a couple of hours each day, this is all for you to work out. For me, I think to begin with, I was just hungry for students. So I onboarded as many students as I possibly could in my first year of tutoring, and because I really liked it. And so I was tutoring at least, I'd say, 2 to 3 hours Monday to Thursday, and then multiple hours on Saturday and Sunday. And even then I still had my social life on Fridays and Saturday nights, which is when most of the time people went out anyway. So I was doing my uni degree, pharmacy, I was having my social life, and I was working on top of that and making some really great money. And that's how eventually I was able to actually save up enough money for a house deposit, which I used and purchased a house at when I was 23 years old. So, these are just things for you to think about. The 4th thing is having a balanced life. So I touched on this just a moment ago. With tutoring, it's one of those things where you can adjust your schedule as you go, and that's a really beautiful thing about it. One way to approach tutoring is through that slow and steady approach, especially if you're somebody who is concerned about breaking that balance of studies, work, and life, and then having tutoring on the side. If you're a little bit trepidatious about how that schedule is going to work, especially because when you first start tutoring, there's definitely a lot more legwork you need to do to get started rather than down the track, just because you're sourcing your teaching material, you're creating teaching material, you're communicating with students outside of class, and you're probably not as efficient and productive as you will be later on. So I think there's a lot more work that happens outside, let's say, that 1 hour of tutoring you have with that one student. I think that's completely understandable that you might be a little bit unsure. And so in that case, I would recommend that turtle approach, going slow and steady, taking on board 1 student, getting comfortable with that, then taking on board another student, figuring out your schedule, the workload, whether or not it's balanced, and then slowly building that up. Of course, you could just go the other route and be a rabbit like me and just sort of onboard as many students as you want to and just, kind of hope for the best. I mean, it worked well for me. I really loved the amount of work that I did in my first year of tutoring, and then in the consequential years afterwards as well. I never really actually scaled down my tutoring until I started building up my business and hiring tutors, because I needed to, focus on the administrative tasks of running and owning a business. So that's some food for thought for you in your short-term and even long-term future. And before we move on to the next point, I just wanted to touch upon that uncertainty with that balance. This is something that I can help you out with as well in my online course, so make sure you stick around for that. 5, this one's really obvious, but tutoring is an incredibly rewarding and fulfilling career. There's nothing like seeing a student's eyes light up and understand what you're saying when they've just been stuck and running into bricks or not being able to understand their teacher in class, and you show them a way that just clears that pathway for them and helps them feel so much more confident in what they're doing. I just don't think you can underestimate how rewarding tutoring is. Like, even for me, when I first started off tutoring, I knew I would enjoy sort of sharing my knowledge and sharing what I'd learned about 1984 by George Orwell with a younger student, just because it was just such an interesting book. But I never realized that, how I interpret the world, how I express and communicate something that I understand in my own unique way would be just so incredible to see click with a younger person. And beyond that, with tutoring, I found that a lot of my students I just connected with really well, especially as time went on and I developed my flair for tutoring and I came into myself more as I grew older. I have a type of personality that attracts the same sort of personality to me. And so I found that a lot of these sessions were just fun. They were professional in the sense that I was teaching them, but the teaching was delivered in an enjoyable way, and that made me as a tutor incredibly fulfilled. I knew that I didn't want to be a tutor who just sort of spoke in a monotonous tone and just you went there for 1 hour per week, you dreaded it. If you're the student, you go in and you go out and there's just no human connection whatsoever with your tutor, which I've had those experiences before. So I knew I didn't want that. You'll find that over time as well, you can actually start being more selective with what sort of students you onboard, especially if you start having a waiting list of students. So, this is still your work at the end of the day. You want to be enjoying your work if possible. Not all work needs to be fun, but if you can make it a little bit more enjoyable, then why wouldn't you, right? And that moves me into my next point, which is the long-term career aspects of tutoring. So now that I moved into tutoring full time and I've turned my entire career based on tutoring services. I've even built up a company where I'm now supporting 50 other people in them being tutors for other students. That's something for you to think about as well. If you've always got this what if about what if I started being a tutor? What if I went down that pathway? Just know that there's so much potential there for you. It's not just a short kind of like 2-3 year thing you do while you're in university, though that's absolutely okay if it is, but it can truly change your life direction. I've had 2 tutors who've worked for me. They were going down a different pathway with their university degree. So I believe one was going down the psychology route, the other one was going down a science degree route. And because they had tutoring on the side and they found it so rewarding, so fulfilling, they've actually both changed paths and they're both now studying a Masters of Teaching. They're both going to go into secondary school teaching, which I think is just unbelievable. Like, that is so freaking cool that tutoring, something that begins as a side job, can manifest into something that's just so much more. So if you're somebody who is thinking about getting started in tutoring, or you're somebody who's already started in tutoring, but you're running into problems, you're running into the questions of, I'm just doing so much work outside of the tutoring itself. How do I narrow this down so that I'm actually just, working that 1 hour per week for that student and getting paid for that time? Or if you're running into other issues such as, overbearing parents, students being unhappy with your sessions for whatever reason it is, these are all challenges that come up over time. They're inevitable. And just like with any other career, you're going to run into aspects that you're not so comfortable with and that maybe you're just not as good at, because you're here because you want to teach, not because you want to go back and forth with the student about the scheduling all the time, having them cancel week after week. Not because you necessarily know how to deal with conflict. If a parent comes to you and says that they're really disappointed that their child didn't get the mark they thought they would would get. I mean, I don't want to scare you with these things, but they happen, and it's okay that they happen, but it's just a matter of how do you navigate these situations so that you can be the best tutor possible. Because yeah, teaching is just one element of it. So I've just launched my first live coaching course. It's a 6-week course called the Part-Time Tutor Academy. I've called it the Part-Time Tutor Academy because I think a lot of people just start off with tutoring as a side gig. You might be only doing a few hours per week, with that possibility of turning it into a full-time career and running a business as I am. So in this 6-week course, essentially I'm going to teach you everything I know about building a sustainable, stable income from tutoring, as somebody who has had over 10 years of tutoring experience. Each week there are live lectures where I'll be teaching you, and then there's going to be a live Q&A afterwards. Then I know a lot of you have asked me quite a few questions about how to get started. What I aim to do with this course is give you a roadmap of how to start getting your first student, what to do once you've got that first student, how to run your session, how to start organizing your lesson templates, and then from there, what are the next steps so that you can start building a referral system so that you have a waiting list of students years in advance awaiting you. And that's what I essentially built for myself, so that after a couple of years, I didn't even need to market myself anymore. I just had people ringing me left, right, and center asking me to be their tutor. So I'll put that link down below for you in the description box and in the comments. If you have any questions about the course, let me know. I'm more than happy to answer them for you. This is my first live cohort. What I'm doing is I'm offering the lowest price ever, just because you guys will be part of my first cohort. I'm going to be learning just as much as you in terms of making sure that I deliver you valuable content that's going to be meaningful and make a difference in your life. But in the future, as I get better with this course, I'm going to increase my prices there. Just like kind of how I increase my prices with my tutoring actually. The course starts on the 28th of June 2021 and it will run until August 6th, but all details are down in the links. I'm also now going to link you to a few other videos where I've discussed how I started my tutoring business and my journey so far, if you wanted to learn more tips and advice from someone who's been doing it for basically a third of her life. Thanks so much for watching, guys. See you next time. Bye.